Magandang umaga, Pilipinas. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining around the world. Welcome to today's webinar where we will try to solve barriers to agricultural finance, access, innovations, and inclusivity. We are streaming to you live through the SEARCA online learning and virtual engagements or SOLVE platform via Zoom and Facebook Live. My name is Jean Labios, and I am a program specialist of the Training for Development Unit under the Education and Collective Learning Department of SEARCA. I will be your moderator for this morning's webinar. The short video shown earlier has given you a glimpse about SEARCA and what we do. SEARCA is hosted by the Philippine government in the campus of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. So we are coming to you live from Los Baños, Laguna, the special science and nature city of the Philippines. This SOLVE webinar is SEARCA's immediate response to the emerging impacts of the COVID-19 global pandemic on food security. By maximizing the use of information and communication technology platforms to inform, educate, and share evidence-based solutions and tested technologies, as well as best practices on the ground. If you are new to this webinar, this is actually the 25th webinar since it was launched last April 28, 2020. In this webinar today, we will be joined by experts who will share their experiences and insights on agriculture financing in the Philippines. SEARCA's 11th five-year plan, which was launched in July 2020, identifies agribusiness models for increased productivity and income as one of the priority areas that would accelerate transformation through agricultural innovation. Before we proceed to our online conversation this morning, please allow me to quickly go over some statistics gathered from the SOLVE webinar held on February 24, 2021. The infograph shows that 67 of our online viewers were female and the rest were male. It also indicates that almost 90 individuals tuned in via Zoom, while over 300 viewed the webinar through SEARCA's Facebook page. Lastly, we are happy to note that we've had online attendees not only from the Philippines, but also from Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Pakistan. Let me now go over the program flow, which is currently shown on your screen. After my introduction and a few housekeeping rules, we will have our first speaker, Ms. Joyce Suficiencia, who is the Director of the Financial Inclusion Office, Strategic Communications and Advocacy of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP. Ms. Suficiencia will open our discussion this morning by presenting BSP's regulatory framework on agriculture financing in the country. Mr. Virginio Jamon, consultant at the Asian Development Bank, or ADB, follows with his presentation on the agriculture value chain financing pilot project between the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and ADB. Our final presenter is Ms. Joyce Mojica Bengo, officer in charge of the Market Development Division, Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance Service, Philippine Department of Agriculture, or DA-AMAS. She will talk about the Department of Agriculture's Financial Grant Assistance Program called the Enhanced Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita Inclusive Food Supply Chain Program. I know you're all excited to listen to our speakers, but let me first encourage you to send us your questions. How do you do this? For those of you who are tuned in via SEARCA's Facebook page, you may type your questions in the comments section. Kindly indicate your location now and or country of origin. If you are tuned in via Zoom, please post your questions or comments in the Q&A box, which you would find in the menu bar on your screen. Kindly indicate your location and or country of origin as well. Our SOLVE team will collate, curate, and compile those questions for me, and I will convey them to our speakers. Hopefully, we will be able to cover as many questions as we can in the time remaining. Please be clear when you are posing a question to a specific presenter or if it is a general question that anybody can respond to. We will do our best to get as many questions as possible during the open forum. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and will be made available on SEARCA's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Today's presentations will be uploaded on SEARCA's website at www.searca.org. The slides shown during the past webinars have already been posted there. For your social media posts, especially on insights or key takeaways from this webinar, please use the hashtag SEARCASolve. If you have issues or are experiencing technical difficulties with the Zoom online platform, please contact us at solve@searca.org. Moving on to today's presentations, our first speaker is Ms. Joyce Suficiencia. As the Director of the Financial Inclusion Office, Strategic Communication and Advocacy of the BSP, Ms. Suficiencia is deeply involved in various initiatives to drive the bank's financial inclusion agenda forward. She handles policy development and advocacy work with a particular focus on inclusive digital finance, MSMEs, and agriculture financing. She joined the BSP more than 18 years ago as a bank examiner. Prior to her current assignment, she was involved in the strategy management and enterprise project management implementation of the BSP. Please welcome Director Ellen Joyce Suficiencia.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day to everyone, wherever you may be. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, SEARCA, for inviting the BSP to be part of this webinar. So I'll go straight to my first slide. Okay, so the BSP recognizes, of course, like most of us here, like every one of us here, we recognize the immense potential of the agriculture sector as a key driver of inclusive and sustainable growth. As a primary source of income for the poorest, and with its potential to drive export-led growth, the sector clearly plays a significant role in broad-based economic development. However, despite the strategic importance of the sector, we know that access to finance remains one of the most pressing challenges. So while banks have been mandated to allocate 25% of their loanable funds for agri-agra credit, compliance of the banking sector has been on a downward trend. And as you can see here, based on data, agri credit fell sharply from 32.27% in 2011 to just 9% in 2020, while agri-reform credit declined from 4.43% to 1% during the same period. This is well below the mandated threshold. Moreover, the share of loans to agriculture, fisheries, and forestry sector to the banking system's total loan portfolio has also seen a sharp decline from a double-digit level of 12.27% in 2010 to just 2.46% in 2020. These dismal figures reflect the long-standing access to finance challenge confronting the agriculture sector, which hamper its growth potential. Supporting this critical sector is therefore really a strategic imperative for the BSP in line with its financial inclusion agenda. And so the BSP reaffirms its commitment to improve the state of agriculture financing in order to harness the sector's full potential as an engine of economic growth and optimize its contribution to post-pandemic recovery of the country. To ensure a holistic approach, the BSP notes the compelling need to contemplate the challenges in agriculture financing from both the demand side or the borrower side and the supply side or the lending side. With this, the BSP supports initiatives anchored on these three strategic thrusts. First is improving the bankability of farmers and their agri-enterprises by building their capabilities and business operations and integrating them to profitable and export-oriented value chains. Such initiatives aim to equip these farmers with necessary business skills to help them engage in bankable agriculture projects that demonstrate clear value proposition and strong revenue and cash flow potential. The second is increasing the institutional capacity of banks to cater to the financing needs of the agri sector. Lending to the sector, particularly the smallholder farmers, is typically perceived as costlier, riskier, and less profitable than other markets. Other notable impediments are the lack of reliable information on agri borrowers, inadequate contract enforcement, and risk mitigating measures, as well as the lack of technical capacity to develop customized lending products for agri households. And so addressing these challenges are contemplated in the BSP's agri-financing initiatives, such as the ongoing agriculture value chain financing pilot project with Asian Development Bank, which our colleague, my fellow panelists will explain and expound later. And the BSP, aside from this pilot project, we also facilitate technical assistance and technology matching grants for rural financial institutions to enable them to leverage digital technology for agriculture financing. And lastly, our third strategic thrust is developing the financial infrastructure. that facilitates the development of risk management instruments necessary to mitigate the adverse impact of inherent risks associated with agriculture lending. This infrastructure would bring about reduced transaction costs and risk, improved sector information and market transparency, and enhanced skills across the sector. In line with this strategic thrust, the BSP actively supports the implementation of the Personal Property Security Act, which aims to promote the use of movable collateral, not just real estate, as acceptable form of collateral. We also support and actively advocate for the passage of the Warehouse Receipts Bill, which aims to promote as well the use of warehouse receipts as credible collateral that can be offered by farmers to banks in order to secure financing. We also we also engage our guarantee programs like the Field Guarantee, and we are also one of the implementers of the Credit Surety Fund program. And so, as mentioned earlier, we support the development of the agriculture value chain financing, or the AVCF, to facilitate the financial inclusion of small farmers and agricultural MSMEs, as well as support and catalyze the growth of export-oriented agri-value chains. In contrast to collateral-based lending, the AVCF aims to leverage on information in order and use acquired information and understanding of the value chain process to adequately assess the risk in lending. So our project with the ADB aims to build the capacity of 6 participating pilot banks. We have 3 thrift banks, 2 rural banks, and 1 cooperative bank to undertake information-based lending through an AVCF approach. So the project aims to demonstrate the viability and promote bank adoption of AVCF. It also aims to determine and identify specific capacity gaps and requirements of banks engaged in AVCF. We will also develop in this project the relevant tools that could be used by banks to engage in AVCF and provide useful information for the formulation of necessary regulations, if any, to support and encourage adoption of AVCF in the banking sector. So the outputs of this project would include the AVCF toolkit and training programs for banks that will be widely shared to the industry and other financial institutions for their easy reference when adopting the AVCF approach. There will also be a case study demonstrating the capacity requirements of banks engaged in AVCF and outlining the challenges, lessons learned, recommendations. We will also have a training program designed for banks on AVCF. And as mentioned, if there are any regulatory measures that are needed, we will also be providing that based on the results of the study and the pilot, implementation of the pilot. So at present, the 6 banks are being assisted by Mr. Virginio Jamon, our ADB consultant, in conducting value chain analysis of identified high-value commodities, which include coffee, cacao, calamansi, vegetables, among others, and in developing as well financing package for identified value chain actors. And our consultant is also identifying possible support for banks and potential clients, AVCF clients, from other government value chain programs. So another key initiative of the BSP that's anchored on its 3 strategic thrusts for agriculture financing is our proposed amendment of the RA number 10,000, or the Agri-Agra Credit Act of 2009, which aims to strengthen rural development by taking a more holistic approach that contemplates the broader agriculture financing ecosystem and rural community development requirements. Our proposed amendments have 3 main components. And the first component relates to enhancing access by rural communities to private sector financing, which involves removing the distinction of agri-credit in the combined 25% threshold, and broadening the scope of rural financing beneficiaries, expanding the types of agricultural credits that may be financed, broadening existing modes of compliance, and promoting special types of lending arrangements, including AVCF, among others. The second component pertains to the creation of an agribusiness management and institution building fund, or we call this a special fund, which shall be used to finance capacity building programs and activities of cooperatives and other duly registered organizations of rural agricultural households in order to improve their productivity, income potential, viability, and of course, leading ultimately to their bankability. And the third component of our proposed amendment entails establishment of an agricultural and fisheries finance and capacity building council, or the AFFCC, which shall be responsible for the management and operations of the special fund. The council will be composed of agri-financing stakeholders from both the government and the private sector. And since we look at the mandatory credits as only temporary stopgap measure, a corresponding sunset provision is also included in the proposed amendment. So we're proposing to wind down the mandatory 25% allocation, credit allocation in a period of 10 years. So pending the passage of the proposed amendments to the Agri-Agra law, the BSP, together with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Agrarian Reform, will soon issue and publish the already approved implementing rules and regulations, IRR amendments, which are also expected to promote bank financing to the Agri-Agra sector. The approved amendments, IRR amendments, include the streamlining of the bank's investment process in Agri-Agra eligible securities. It also includes the expansion of the eligible modes of compliance with agrarian reform credit to consider financing of ARB or agrarian reform beneficiary households and their agriculture activities, as well as loans for the construction and upgrading of infrastructure that generally benefit the ARBs, their households, and their communities, the agrarian reform communities. And the amendment also recognizes special types of lending arrangements as eligible mode of alternative compliance, such as the AVCF, and lending to agribusiness enterprises that maintain agri-commodity supply chain, and lending for palay housing and farming homestead. So these are additional highlighted eligible modes of compliance. And on my last slide, we show here some of our other initiatives to promote MSME and agri-financing. And one of these would be the credit risk database. It's a joint project of the BSP and the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or the JICA. And the CRD is essentially a new type of credit information infrastructure that can be used by banks to assess the credit worthiness of small and medium enterprises through the use of statistical credit scoring models. And through this credit scoring model, the aim is really to lessen the dependence of banks on collateral for their credit decisioning and promote true risk-based lending. And the project was launched last December 2020. Data collection has started, and the target is to launch the credit scoring services by late 2022. Another program, which I also mentioned earlier, is the Credit Surety Fund. So it's a credit enhancement scheme which aims to provide a maximum of 80% surety cover for loans granted by banks to cooperatives and their MSMEs that we know are typically experience difficulties when accessing bank credit facilities. So the CSF is actually institutionalized under the CSF Act of 2015. And under this law, it's the CDA, or the Cooperative Development Authority, which serves as the lead implementing agency responsible for the registration and supervision of the CSF cooperative. So it's a new type of cooperative. Well, for the BSP, our role there is really to spearhead the promotion and capacity building of CSFs. Last year, we conducted a series of webinars attended by officers and staff of registered CSF cooperatives and personnel from the CSF department of the CDA. And we will enter into a memorandum of agreement with the CDA to further strengthen and formalize our cooperation arrangement to ensure that we are able to effectively implement the objectives of the CSF Act and ensure the effectiveness of the program in support of the financing needs of the cooperatives and their member MSMEs. We're also going to support the study to be conducted by the International Finance Corporation, or the IFC, on the supply chain financing. So the goal really here is to promote the SCF market in the country, SCF being recognized as an innovative financing approach for MSMEs that aim to leverage the receivables and inventory flows, as well as supply chain relationships. So through this study, the idea really for this study is to inform strategic initiatives that the BSP and other policymakers can support and introduce in order to promote supply chain financing and develop that market towards improved MSME financing in the country. We're also introducing, in partnership with the industry associations and other government agencies like the DTI, the adoption of a standard business loan application form to make the loan application process more streamlined and borrower-friendly, especially for small enterprises who are typically intimidated to approach banks, given the numerous and voluminous loan application forms and requirements. So the bank will also benefit from this in terms of improved risk assessment and enable them to also readily shift to adopting digital onboarding and other means of leveraging on digital technology. So a technical working group was already established, and as mentioned, it's composed of other government agencies, including the Field Guarantee Corporation and the industry associations, the various industry associations. We're targeting to introduce the standard loan application form in 2022 next year, but the pilot will be done this year. And lastly, we are also supporting the Asian Development Bank in the implementation in the conduct of a national demand-side MSME survey, which aims to bridge the current MSME knowledge gap by generating new insights and more granular data on MSME access to finance. And the results of this survey could support evidence-based policy making. And for the banks, it can serve as a market research study for them, so they can also that they can also use to tailor their products and services for the sector. So I guess this is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take more questions later after the last speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Suficiencia, for sharing with us the status of the agri law in the Philippines. We note the proposed amendments on the law, which are seen as tools to help boost farm productivity and farmers' incomes. And we also note the BSP initiatives for MSMEs and agri-financing, especially the Agri Value Chain Financing Pilot Project, which will actually be the next topic of our discussion. For our next speaker, we have Mr. Virginio Jamon, consultant from the Asian Development Bank, or ADB, for the Agri Value Chain Financing Pilot Project of BSP. Mr. Jamon, the screen is yours.
Okay, good morning. whatever or wherever you are. I am Virginio Jamon. I am a consultant of Asian Development Bank working for the Agri Value Chain Financing Project with BSP as the lead agency and with technical assistance from ADB. So my presentation would focus more, will be more focusing on the details on the value chain. My colleague, Miss Joyce, has somehow introduced the topic on value chain, but I'll be more focusing on the details. What is or the total ramifications of the value chain project? And the presentation normally is for loan officers. So I am, in a way, presenting it from the perspective of a bank. Okay, but I will try very hard to present it wherein I would be able to answer some questions like, can an ordinary farmer borrow from a bank? Can a small entrepreneur borrow from a bank under the value chain financing framework? Okay, so these are the overview. As a brief background, the project was somehow a result of a steering committee, which is the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion, wherein BSP is also one of the lead agencies here. And another reason why there is a value chain project is BSP issued circular number 908 promoting value chain financing as an approach that would somehow encourage banks to expand their exposure to agriculture sector, or in particular the small farmers. Of course, since this is a government initiated program, this has to have some collaboration or synergism with other government agencies. And all of these are with support of the Asian Development Bank. So the project, as mentioned, is basically purely technical assistance, okay, funded by Asian Development Bank. So it's basically for the conduct of value chain analysis, design, and delivery of certain value chain financial products. As mentioned by my colleague, there are 6 pilot banks right now, okay? There are 3 thrift banks, 2 rural banks, and 1 cooperative bank. So, and there's of course a steering committee who provides policy directions and guidance for the whole project. And all of this will be inputted to a possible future policy issuances of BSP based on the results, experiences of this project. So the output basically is a toolkit. This is also mentioned by Ms. Joyce, okay? Based on the actual concrete experiences of the 6 pilot banks, this will be collated and will be able to develop a toolkit for the other banks who might be interested to also adopt value chain. This will also be used for existing banks who may want to further scale up their loan exposure to agriculture in general or to small farmers in particular. There will be case studies. Okay? There is also a training program for the loan officers. And need me, there would be some policy, appropriate, or regulatory measures that will be inputted also as a future direction. So there are 3 outcomes. Of course, the real long-term goal is for the banking sector in general to increase. Okay, the 6 pilot banks right now, the average exposure to agriculture is below 50%. Okay, and while it is maybe significant, the agriculture exposure is basically for the relatively larger accounts, or what they call as the big ticket accounts. As to the share of the small farmers, maybe it would be safe to say that it is increasing. It has to be increased to a further level that would be somehow be called respectable. And of course, all of this will require strategic interventions, okay, that will sustain whatever we have started here in the increased bank exposure to agriculture. And of course, the value chain is not only for these 6 pilot banks, but for anybody, for any bank who would be interested to make it or to institutionalize it as their own. So in terms of timeline, the project started in 2019, but somewhat slowed down by the pandemic. So we're a bit delayed, but hopefully by 2021, we expect by May or June of this year, we expect certain approved and release accounts. So these are the first test cases wherein the bank are able to adapt the value chain approach and come up with certain approved accounts. What really is value chain? So some review is basically sequence of value activities, but if I may present it or describe it from the point of view of the bank, it is basically considering all actors in the value chain. Normally, the bank is boxed in or limited to one actor. 9 out of 10 cases, the analysis of the bank is limited to the whoever is the borrower. In this case, the borrower is always the producer. There is no mention or is not included other actors who may have some effect or impact on the viability of the project of the producer. So there are minimal or no attempt at all to include in the loan evaluation process the role of input suppliers, the processors, and other actors in the chain. So the value chain is trying to enhance, expand analysis, of one particular loan proposal, specifically in agriculture. So what is value chain financing? So value chain financing is also the same. So if we do a CIBI, a credit investigation background information of a particular clientele, we're not doing or we're not limiting it to the producer only, but we would also do a CIBI, a due diligence of the other actors in the chain. So the implication for the loan officer here is to expand their analysis, to expand their framework, and meaning there will be more work for them in terms of workload. So in a value chain, there are 3 big elements. The first bucket is, of course, knowledge. There should be complete understanding of the business or the complete understanding of the value chain. So this is the core part of the value chain financing approach. We need information. Information-based lending. That's what it's been described now. Okay. There is an attempt to shift from collateral orientation of most banks to the information-based lending. This is the direction of the value chain project. Hopefully, as also mentioned by my colleague Joyce, the banks would veer away from too much emphasis on the hard collateral. But instead of hard collateral, they may want to generate information, and by generating information, they may be able to identify credit risks, and based on what they have identified, they may be able to manage or risk-reducing or come up with risk-reducing measures based on information. So in essence, we're saying here under the value chain project is we're trying to make information as a proxy for collateral or hard collateral. Hopefully, the banks would be able to understand that and shift or veer away from too much collateral or hard collateral orientation. Only after the generation of information that they will be able to do a financial assessment. As mentioned, financial assessment is basically risk assessment. If there is confidence that they will be able to approve a particular loan proposal, it is basically because they have already appreciated or understood the business or the whole value chain framework of a particular commodity. And based on that, they will proceed with the approval of a loan. And after that is, after the approval, the follow-up or the post-loan activities that they have to do further. Remember, if it is collaterally secured, normally the monitoring is relatively minimal. But if it is information-based lending, the monitoring after the post-loan approval would continue, and have to be done in a very intensive manner. So value chain is several steps, okay? One is, as I mentioned, you have to understand the chain, the value chain, full understanding. I'm saying full, hopefully it's 100% understanding. But some banks would say that maybe at certain 70% or 80% understanding of the chain, maybe that would prompt them to make an approval. But it depends on the risk appetite of a particular bank. Because what banks are complaining right now is the act or the activity in generating information is very tedious. It's not only tedious, it's also very costly. Okay? So maybe they would try to come up with at least 70 to 80% level of information, then they will be able to come up with certain decisions as to whether it's approved or disapproved. They have to identify existing models, value chain models. There are so many models out there. They have to identify the transaction processes, not only one actor in the chain, but all actors in the chain. They have to identify critical points of finance. Okay, and based on the critical points, they have to analyze options. How will they be able to structure their loan in such a way that credit risk is kept at the minimum and avoidance of past due will be done. So in the end, the design would be the last activity, but based on the information that they have generated. This is an example of value chain. This is AVCF. If you show this to the banks, the immediate or the knee-jerk reaction of banks, that's how enormous the data requirement is for AVCF, for example. If they do financing of AVCF, they have to learn, they have to understand every bit of information needed here. They have to validate the core activity processes from input up to the consumption. They have to identify the actors in every core activity. They have to identify the support mechanism, whether there are some government agencies who tries to support. In this case, it's with FIDA for the AVCF. Whether there are other non-government agencies or donor-funded projects which are also in the same commodity, which can provide technical assistance. This is how enormous the information requirement is. That is only for AVCF. And this is being done in most of the commodities that I will show later. The value chain is normally, again, as I mentioned, would require or would entail several financing. If in the past, the regular lending activity of most banks is limited to one actor, under the value chain, we're saying that all possible actors could be eligible as borrowers at the same time. Not only producers, the associations, the input suppliers, the processors, and the like. So this could be a simultaneous financing of all the value chain actors. But of course, the bottom line here is the risk appetite of the bank. But they should be able to understand that if they do finance the other actors in the chain, it would increase viability of the whole chain and therefore would further reduce whatever risk that they may encounter in financing a particular commodity. The value chain would like also to graduate most of the banks from small type of lending or limited to a particular activity lending, which is production oriented, into something like other activities to include processing, marketing, distribution, and the like. So when you do finance, we're asking the banks, if you do finance, definitely please consider also the other level of activities, not only production. In this case, they should not be limited to small accounts or small amounts of loan, but also to relatively bigger amounts of loans. For example, processing, particularly fixed assets. Fixed asset example is just the procurement of machines and warehouse and maybe delivery vehicles. So how is value chain different from the regular lending activity of the bank right now? This is my way to simplify and be able to convince the banks, the 6 pilot banks that we're working in. Okay, I am simply saying that value chain is nothing or not really different from what is what is the regular credit cycle that they are used to. The value chain would only be relevant if there is like this. Meaning, the new thing that we will be introducing in the regular credit cycle is how to generate information in every aspect of the cycle. This is just trying to situate the importance of information, okay, in the hope that they may be able to veer away from collateral. Another way of presenting it is through the credit process. This is a typical credit process of the bank. The question here is, where is value chain financing approach? So value chain is basically here. Hopefully, to the information that you'll be able to generate, okay, they'll come up with a good analysis of the credit risk that they will be able to face as they lend to agriculture in general or small farmers in particular. In another way of doing this, okay, we say that the more information or the lesser information, I think, the lesser information is the higher the risk. The more information, the smaller the risk. So these are some of the way to argue in favor of information-based lending. All they have to do is just generate information and come up with a certain level of confidence in terms of level of information that will prompt them to do action. But the more information, the lesser the risk. So what is the another similarity in what banks are doing? Of course, the 5 C's of credit: character, capital, capacity, condition, collateral. Where is value chain in the process? It is basically almost the same. Value chain is also interested in assessing or determining borrower's credit worthiness. So how do you do that? You go to the analysis of the 5 C's of credit. But how do you do that in the value chain financing approach? You need more information. Now, what type of information? For example, if you do a character analysis of a particular account, we're saying that it's not limited to a particular actor in the chain, but you are also interested to see or determine the character of other actors in the chain. The input suppliers, the processors, the distributors, they should be also assessed in terms of character. In terms of capital, you're not limited to the particular capital capacity of a particular borrower, but all actors in the chain as well. The expanding analysis from one particular actor to almost all the actors in the chain. Capacity, the same is true. Okay? So you're not limited to one, but limited, of course, you have to increase, improve, and expand analysis to all actors. Condition, that's government. And collateral, this is the last step. We're trying to tone down the importance of collateral by using information. The hope is the approved accounts by May or June, this will not require hard collateral. The loan amounts right now being contemplated by at least 2 or 3 banks is in the tune of millions in terms of loan size. So the hope is that they will be able to lend at size of millions without requiring collateral or hard collateral. So one are the commodities being considered right now. One is coffee. Okay? So coffee, particularly in Bukidnon and Davao Sur. Of course, we're also interested in the Benguet area, but more of the work of the banks are in Bukidnon and Davao Sur area for coffee. Cacao is also in Caraga. So that's still Mindanao. So there are many prospective borrowers for cacao in Caraga. There is a new commodity which we call the sweetwater coconut. This is particularly true in Negros Oriental. In fact, we have already 2 approved accounts in Negros Oriental to the tune of 500,000 per account. No collateral, based on information. Next is abaca. Abaca is also in Caraga. Next is lakatan. Lakatan is a high-value banana next to Cavendish, but it has more potential, growth potential than Cavendish. That's what they say. Okay. Particularly, we're referring to the Class A big hand lakatan. And mostly these are being catered to institutional buyers in Metro Manila and Metro Cebu. Then another new thing is dragon fruit. Okay. Dragon fruit is also being tested or being considered in Negros Oriental. There are some initiatives in Zamboanga for the dragon fruit, but not much. Basically, the more maybe a significant preparatory activities has been accomplished for dragon fruit in Negros Oriental. The other new thing is adlay. I don't know if you are familiar with adlay. This is relatively a new product. In fact, the value chain of adlay is very, very new. It's not yet matured. So it's not much information that you can get from adlay. Okay? But there is a promise, there is a growth potential for adlay because it is being sought after by health buffs. Okay? Especially for diabetic people like me. This is good for health reasons. And there's a big demand in Metro Manila and Metro Cebu. And most of the distribution here is through the online marketing. There is a big market, there's a big project in Gensan, yellow corn, okay, that will satisfy the requirements of the integrators like San Miguel. And one Thai-based multinational company, CP Foods. So they're asking for 30,000 metric tons of feeds of yellow corn per month. So the bank in Gensan is considering financing 1,500 hectares of yellow corn. How do they do that? Of course, they have to generate information. And of course, vegetables. Vegetables has a gender dimension. Okay. One thing good about vegetables is that most of the prospective vegetable growers are wives or females. Okay. And this is very good insofar as ADB is concerned because somehow the banks are also considering the women borrowers, not only the male borrowers, but the women borrowers. So there is potential for more women borrowers if the commodity is vegetables. So these are just what we call as the shopping list. Shopping list because nothing is yet final except for the water coconut wherein there are already 2 approved accounts. But coffee is relatively more advanced right now. And lakatan is also relatively more advanced. And to a certain extent, vegetables. Okay? But much work is being done for abaca. Much work is being done for adlay and for dragon fruit as well. So these are the commodities being considered by our 6 pilot banks. If there are interested growers or farmers right now or who is listening right now, you may want to contact us. So in the end, what are the milestones? We want increased prepayment, portfolio quality-wise. We want to reduce costs in lending and reduce risk in lending. Okay. In the end, will be increased exposure of banks in agriculture, increase of exposure of banks, particularly for small farmers and fisher folks. So that's ends my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jamon. We note the importance of to understand the value chain to be able to design best fit financing. It is good to know of the BSP's Agri Value Chain Financing Initiative on the banking sector to reach more smallholder farmers and fisher folks, as well as micro and small enterprises, and encourage them to borrow from banks to help with their financing needs. Again, may I remind our online attendees watching the webinar via Facebook Live, please start typing your questions in the comments section, including your location or country of origin. If you are tuned in via Zoom, please post your questions in the Q&A box, which you will find in the menu bar on your screen. While waiting for our next speaker's presentation to be shared on the screen, please allow me to tell you more about her. She is Ms. Joyce Mojica Bengo, OIC Chief of the Market Development Division of the Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance Service, Philippine Department of Agriculture, or DA-AMAS. Previously, she was the team leader of the Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita program, which is one of the major programs of the Department of Agriculture. Ms. Bengo holds a Master of Public Management, major in Rural Development from the Development Academy of the Philippines and the Ateneo de Manila University under the DENR Convergence Initiative Scholarship Program. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Bengo.
Thank you, Ms. Jean. Good day, everyone. We thank SEARCA for inviting us to present DA's program. I am Joyce Bengo. I am pleased to present to you the Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita program, a flagship program of the Department of Agriculture, DA. So this is the outline of my presentation. I shall discuss briefly the DA's mandate and vision, including the DA Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance, AMAS, which leads the implementation of the program. I shall also discuss our overall guiding framework in the implementation of agribusiness and marketing interventions, where the Kadiwa program is one. The Kadiwa program concept shall also be presented. Then we shall zoom in on the enhanced Kadiwa Financial Grant Assistance Program to include the grant packages, eligible beneficiaries, status of implementation, and some sharing of success stories. The DA is mandated government agency responsible for the promotion of agricultural development by providing the policy framework, public investments, and support services needed for the domestic and export-oriented business enterprises. The DA envisions a food-secure Philippines with the prosperous farmers and fishers. It shall collectively empower and the private sector to increase agricultural productivity and profitability, taking into account sustainable, competitive, and resilient technologies and practices. Hence, its battle cry is simply masaganang ani at mataas na kita, or bountiful harvest and higher income, which we call in short ani at kita. So for the Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance Service, one of the frontline units of the DA is the AMAS. The AMAS is mandated as provided by the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act or AFMA of 1997 to empower the Filipino farmers and fisherfolk through the provision of timely, accurate, and responsive business information and efficient trading services, which will link them to profitable markets for their products and provision of innovative support through the assistance in marketing toward the generation of maximum income of farmers and fisherfolk. You would note that two most important tasks of AMAS is to provide market or business information and market linkages of farmers and fisherfolk. Anchored on this mandate, AMAS aims that its interventions, programs, projects, and activities would all contribute towards achieving these goals and objectives. FFEs or FCAs operating profitably, linked to markets and with value addition, improved marketplace, and expanded markets for agro-based products. And as such, inclusive, diversified, and efficient agro-industry will be expected outcomes that would contribute in realizing the DA's vision, food secure Filipinos, availability of food, as well as prosperous farmers and fisherfolk. The Enhanced Kadiwa ni Ani and Kita program is DA's core program, which is facilitative on direct market linkage, where producers or farmers and fisherfolk are directly linked with the consuming public, making available food commodities at reasonable prices to consumers. Kadiwa is loosely translated as one idea or one thought. The program aims to make accessible and available quality agri-fishery products such as rice, fish, poultry, livestock, fruits and vegetables, and other basic commodities at affordable prices to the urban poor and their families. The second objective is to establish an additional market for small farmers and folks produce and or catch, thereby increasing their respective incomes. And lastly, the program aims to ensure the stability of price and supply of food and other basic commodities with the urban poor areas. Showing in your screens is the Kadiwa Inclusive Food Supply Chain program, which we are hoping that we would create a new pathway. You would notice that in the conventional food supply chain, in the blue chain, from the farmers, the products will be passed through the wholesaler trader to transport the products to the distributor or retailer until it reaches the end consumers. You will note again that there are several trading layers before the product reaches the consumers, making it inefficient due to several layers or several channels and marketing costs in each segment. In the end, the cost will be passed on to the consumers. Under the Kadiwa food supply or inclusive food supply chain, the DA performs a facilitative role among the market players by facilitating the direct linkage among market players. The program also seeks to institutionalize the Kadiwa interventions gained from the initial experience, establishing and strengthening the new market-based distribution system that can be tapped even during the ECQ or beyond the ECQ period. The Kadiwa food supply chain aims to ensure the trading layers to reduce the trading layers, thereby maximizing the benefits for the producers and to the end consumers. So briefly, I would like to show you the Kadiwa modalities, the direct market linkage modalities of the DA AMAS, which we have been doing since even before the pandemic. So these are the modalities of the Kadiwa. We have Kadiwa on wheels, Kadiwa retail selling, Kadiwa online, Kadiwa express, and e-Kadiwa, which primarily the objective is to bring the affordable agri-fishery products to the consumers. So we have Kadiwa wheels or Kadiwa retail selling, which aims to sell directly to the farmers, selling directly to the consumers. And we have Kadiwa online and Kadiwa express, linking the farmers to institutional or wholesale markets. And we have the e-Kadiwa, providing consumers with convenience to access agri-commodities through our digital platform. However, it has been observed that while we are implementing the Kadiwa program before the ECQ or before the pandemic, we have noted several challenges. It has been observed that in implementing the new route, the red line, problems on trading capital to consolidate farmers' produce, inadequate transport facilities and storage facilities, limited distribution or retail partners were the challenges identified. Hence, the DA came up with a program that would enhance the capacities of farmers, fisherfolk organization to become reliable food commodity suppliers to consumers, and for the community-based organizations to sustainably operate the Kadiwa retail stores. This is the Enhanced Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita Financial Grant Assistance Program. The capacity enhancement of FCAs, we call the Farmers Fisherfolk Cooperative Associations as FCAs, and the CBOs for value-adding activities in the supply chain. So this is the necessary intervention to ensure that they will be sustainably selling or supplying to the Kadiwa areas that we have identified. This is to ensure sustainability of the market-based distribution system. On your screen is the Enhanced Kadiwa Financial Grant Assistance Program packages. So what are the available grant packages? We have three types. These are the type A, B, and C. For type A, this is for intended for assemblers. The financial grant in the amount of 200,000 pesos up to 1 million shall be extended to a qualified FCA to enhance its capacity to undertake on-site aggregation and pre-processing activities to be municipal or provincial assemblers at efficiency and capacity level competitive with private chain. The financial grants may be utilized by the FCAs for any or combination of the following. They can be used as seed capital for the procurement of produce from farmer members, construction or small storage or assembly area, and among others. So for the type B grant for consolidators, this is intended to finance projects that will enhance their capacity as consolidator or distributor. An amount of up to 5 million pesos can be extended to eligible FCAs. So what are the eligible projects? This can be this or the financial grant can be used as seed capital, and it can also be used for construction of storage facility or logistics facility that will help them in the transport and distribution of their products. The DAR must also helps these FCAs to link them with financing institutions like Land Bank or our own project through the ACPC financing, Agri-Negosyo Financing Loan Program, if they would need additional capital. And then for Type C grant, which is intended for community-based organizations, a financial grant up to 150,000 shall be extended to qualified CBOs to operate and manage Kadiwa stores on a continuing basis. Small financial grants shall be extended for setting up small storerooms, purchase freezers, among others. So we'd like to note that this program is our COVID-19 response to help ensure the food availability, accessibility, and affordability during this pandemic. And this was funded through the Bayanihan Tuhil as One Act funding or budget. So who are the eligible beneficiaries of this financial grant? So this is not a loan program. This is totally a grant to be provided to the Farmer Fisher Folks Associations or FCAs and community-based organizations. So the eligible FCAs should be duly registered with government agencies such as SEC, CDA, or DOLE, and they should be composed primarily of small agricultural producers, farmers, farm workers, agrarian reform beneficiaries, or the fisher folk. For community-based organizations, we are referring to NGOs or non-government organizations, cooperative associations, or people's organizations that are also duly registered to SEC, CDA, and DOLE. So we have to make sure that the FCA CBO partners have the core management team. So these are one of our considerations to give the financial grant is that the FCA must submit a proposal showing that there's a core management team, that they should demonstrate the capability to procure from farmers, and of course, they should have this counterpart for the project, for the proposed project. So we'd like to update you that as of last year, for the implementation last year, we have about 125 FCAs and CBOs beneficiaries nationwide availing of the Financial Grant Assistance Program. So now let's look into some success stories of the Enhanced Kadiva Financial Grant Program. Case in point, the Kaayunan Multipurpose Cooperative in Basud, Camarines Norte. The CMC has qualified for the grant under the Enhanced Kadiwa Food Supply Chain Program. The grant is worth 2 million pesos, which they use to purchase the 10-wheeler truck. We have observed that most of the proposals received by the DA are requests on the provision of transport vehicles, since it has been a major challenge during the pandemic, the movement of goods from farms to market. So the CMC were able to assist several farmers in their community. For instance, there's a five pineapple farmers that were assisted by the cooperative, and they were able to sell their pineapple products on a higher price. So, for instance, before they are selling to traders, they are selling at the mercy of the local traders in a straight buying scheme, where there are only two standards being considered by these traders, such as the good and the butter balls or out. So they have the traders command the price of these products, but through the support of the cooperative, they were able to market the pineapple products or the pineapples of these farmers to the co-op, and then the co-op facilitated the marketing. The selling prices of the pineapples, which was higher than the price offered by the traders by 6 to 11 pesos. Since the co-op acquired the 10-wheeler truck, they were able to facilitate 2 trips to Metro Manila in January and February this year, transporting about 36 metric tons of queen pineapple to the major trading center in Quezon City. As a result, the farmers had direct access to the market, the minimized participation of middlemen and other unnecessary trading layers, increase in income as farmers can command better prices. Farmers are encouraged to continue farming since it has become a profitable enterprise, and it gave them additional income from the rental of hauling trucks. Before the procurement of the trucks, they were renting trucks from service providers at around 30,000 pesos per trip. So that's their savings. Again, through the financial grant, the FCAs were provided with trading capital to procure from farmer members. The Jardinero Agricultural Cooperative at Santa Ignacia Tarlac in Luzon received 1 million pesos financial grant to be used as working capital to buy palay from farmer members. Also, the Department of Agriculture in Cordillera Administrative Region granted 600,000 pesos for Kaliking Farmers Multipurpose Cooperative to purchase brand new trading vehicle in support to their consolidation and marketing of Highland Vegetables project. Kaliking Farmers MPC is consolidating vegetables and fruits produced by farmers in the area. With only one vehicle for hauling and delivery, their reach is very limited. But now that they have this acquired vehicle, their activity could be enhanced to haul produce from different farms. Next is the Canitoan Farmers Multipurpose Cooperative, which received 1 million pesos grant. The grant shall finance to support packing house facilities such as working capital worth 240,000, hauling vehicle around 670,000, and funds for the ancillary equipment that the cooperative needs to procure. The CAFAMCO is one of the DA Region 10's Kadiwa supplier that directly buys other farm produce in the area, and they are selling directly to the Kadiwa outlets which I have presented a while ago. Since October 2020, the DA has started awarding of grant to FCAs and CBOs. In this picture, 3 farmer cooperatives from Caraga region were awarded with financial grant. The Sumilihon Tagibo Farmers Association in Butuan received 500,000 grant. The Kooperatiba sa Katauhan sa Mahaba para sa Kalambuhan in Cabadbaran City, Agusan del Norte received 300,000 financial grant, and Bayugan Achievers Multipurpose Cooperative or Bangko in Bayugan City, Agusan del Sur received 300,000 financial grant. So while we are celebrating the National Women's Month, the Pinay Boracay Cooperative in Boracay, consisting of 500 members, had access to our financial grant assistance. They received 250,000 trading capital to support their marketing operations. This is only the first tranche of their financial grant because they'll be receiving 500,000 pesos. The DA continues to extend the necessary interventions to farmers and fisherfolk cooperatives and associations and community-based organizations. The enhanced Kadiva financial grant assistance shall continue this year. Hence, we are encouraging the FCAs and CBOs to apply for the grant. The application forms and templates for those interested FCAs and CBOs, they can download the form in the website shown in your screens. And they can submit the proposal directly to the DA AMAS, to our office, or to the concerned regional field offices through our counterpart office, Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance Division. In summary, the Department of Agriculture remains true to its commitment to make food accessible and available to the consuming public, even more in times of the pandemic. As our secretary has mentioned, during the height of lockdown, Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita became one of the most important programs of the Department of Agriculture, providing access to quality and safe food products at very low prices. And we are thankful to our farmers and fisher folks supporting especially also to our partners supporting this initiative. And I would like to end this presentation on this based on FAO report on COVID-19 agricultural markets, trade, and FAO response to be presented today during the 74th session on Committee on Commodity Problems. It was observed that despite the disruptions, global food commodity markets and agricultural trade have proved resilient to the COVID-19 shock. Agricultural trade has continued to flow, global markets continue to be well supplied, and prospects are favorable, at least for the basic foodstuff. So with that, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Bengo, for sharing with us the Department of Agriculture's rationale behind the Kadiwa, Ni Ani at Kita program. We note the new pathways the program aimed to create for our farmers and fisher folks to have a direct link with consumers. To our viewers who wanted to explore the enhanced Kadiwa Financial Grant Assistance Program, we hope that Ms. Bengo's presentation has helped and encouraged you. As what she said, for those who are interested, application forms may be downloaded at agribusiness.da.gov.ph. With that, let us now move on to the open forum. We have a little more time left to accommodate a few questions from the audience. The first question that we have is for Director Suficiencia. It's from Dr. Eufemio Rasco. The current AVCF approach does not include waste management, which is important to achieve circularity in the system. Can this be covered in the future?
Hello, thanks for your question, Mr. Rasco. It's I don't I won't categorically say that it's not included in the AVCF because the AVCF can cover these processes if, for instance, one of the target outputs of the value chain is a waste conversion product. So that will be covered. But under the pilot project, this is not. This is not part of the assessment yet of Mr. Genie. One of the value chain analysis assessments done by Sir Genie, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Sir Genie can also correct me, but this is not yet covered. But in other AVCFs, not AVCF that's not covered yet by Sir Genie's project, but in other AVCF, this can be covered. I also want to share maybe that in our proposed amendment of the RA 10,000, we also included there as an eligible compliance mode the financing of green activities, green finance activities. So that would also cover waste management and ecological enhancement projects. But for AVCF, I'd like to think that the AVCF doesn't really discriminate whether the end product is an actual product that's, the traditional AVCF product. It can also cover waste conversion products, but it's just a matter of what part of the what chain are you looking at. But again, just to emphasize, the current value chains that are being assessed by Sir Genie right now under our pilot project, it doesn't cover yet the waste management process. Maybe Sir Genie can also add to that.
Thank you, Director Suficiencia. Sir Genie?
Yes, if the waste management is one of the core activities in the value chain, yes, it can be included. But as of now, we have yet to encounter waste management as one of the core activities in the value chain. So, but it can be included. We are open to it if ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Genie. We have a next question. It's actually addressed to you. It's from Dr. Rasco again. Will the AVCF production loan be commodity-based or farmer-based who may be engaged in multi-cropping?
Again, from the point of view of the bank, okay, it is always a function of risk. Okay, so if it is intercrop, okay, then therefore there is an attempt to diversify or to spread out the risk. It is being done or being considered in Gensan, wherein yellow corn will be intercropped with long gestating crops like Hass avocado. So Hass avocado and yellow corn as intercrop. For the vegetables, we call it more of a rotating crop because the vegetable, for example, in Nevesia is what to call this? It's seasonal. So there are times of the year wherein they only plant vegetables only as intercrop or at least interspersed with the main cropping of palay. So it can be done if it's rotation, and it's also being considered for financing. Okay, but for the other commodities, the banks would prefer monocrop. Okay, it is really crop based. Why? Because it is market driven commodity. In other words, nothing moves without a pre-identified buyer. We're not considering open market as our primary market, but normally if we plant something today, we already have identified a buyer in the future time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Jeannie. Our next question is for Ms. Bengo. What are the common barriers or hindrances of farmers and fisher folks when it comes to having their applications to the Enhanced Kadiwa program approved?
For one of the challenges we've observed from our farmers who are also applying for the financial grant is that they are not yet organized or they are not yet registered to concerned government agencies, and that's why we have created or modified our guidelines wherein we have engaged the local government units. We download funds to the LGUs to enable the farmer producers who are not yet eligible for the financial grant to receive the assistance they need. So that's one of the challenges that we've noted during the implementation of this financial grant program.
Thank you, Ms. Bengo. Our next question is again from Dr. Rasco for the Central Bank folks. Do you see any role for online banks like CIMB in agriculture financing? Maybe Ms. Director Suficiencia would like to answer.
Yeah, unless there are other central bank representatives here. Not necessarily, not directly agriculture financing, but CIMB can serve the other financial service requirements of farmers. It may not be necessarily credit immediately, but maybe just the payment, digital payment requirements of our farmers and their enterprises. So it really depends on the business model also of the bank. For a digital bank like CIMB, they're currently focused, I believe, on retail banking and personal lending only, not necessarily agriculture financing. And I think in Sir Jeannie's presentation, he really highlighted that agriculture financing requires specialized skills, specialized credit skills, and institutional capacity to undertake sustainable agriculture financing. A digital bank like the CIMB definitely has a role to play in that ecosystem, in the financing requirements ecosystem of the farmers and the agriculture sector, but maybe not credit at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Director Suficiencia. We have a next question here for Ms. Joyce Bengo. To what extent is DA providing staff for the Kadiwa? How will it be sustained?
So recognizing this that this Kadiva program is important to ensure that food available and accessible, we have the Secretary instructed the different units of DA were mobilized to provide us assistance if we would need additional staff complement to ensure that the selling activities, for instance, are well manned, and also we engage more partners. We engage partners, private sector or government organizations to help us implement this Kadiwa. We've actually forged partnership with DOLE, with DOE, with DTI, among others. So this is really a whole government approach to provide Kadiwa to where it is really needed.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce. There's another question here for you. Are these programs of Kadiwa programs in the regional offices of the DA? Could we inquire directly with them? And what if the associations in the community are into processing? Could they still avail of the program?
I advise them to link directly, contact directly our counterpart in the regional office, the Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance Division, and they will help us on their concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Bengo. Our next question is for Director Suficiencia. How much penalties do banks pay for non-compliance and how is this used? Can the generated funds be used for capacity development of programs for agri-co-ops and the like?
Right now, under the current law, it's given to the agriculture fund guarantee fund pool, or the AGFP, which is now under the Phil Guarantee Program, and the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. And BSP retains a token amount for administrative fee. So that's how it's being used at the moment. But in our proposal, the idea is to channel all the penalties to the special fund, which will then be used to finance capacity building programs of the farmers and other eligible beneficiaries.
Thank you, Director Suficiencia. We have one last question from the audience, and this is for Virginio Jamon. In your conversations with members of the banking industry, what is the most common challenge that they experience when they talk to farmers and fisher folks? What is a common hindrance to getting loans?
Normally, it's collateral. Still collateral, the hard collateral. That's why we're trying to convince them, if they adopt the value chain financing approach, it is to veer away from over-orientation in the hard collateral. We're not saying here that they should not require collateral. We're simply saying here that if they do generate information, they will be able to identify the credit risk, and based on that identification of credit risk, they will be able to manage risk and come up with certain collateral substitutes. And if in case there's still security or credit risk not yet addressed, then maybe as a last option, they can still refer to that hard collateral. Only if there is still something left that's not covered yet by the other collateral substitutes.
All right, thank you, Sir Ginny. We have a few more questions lined, but in the interest of time, we will be sending your comments and questions to our speakers for them to answer, and we will share them via email to those who ask the questions. Before we close this webinar, may I request our speakers for some closing or takeaway message? Let us start with Director Suficiencia.
Once again, thank you so much for this opportunity to share what BSP is doing to support the agriculture financing. BSP is really working to ensure that our banks, our supervised entities, can sustainably serve the financing requirements of the agriculture sector, especially the smallholders. And for us to do this, we also need the support of the industry, especially in advocating for crucial legislative reforms to make lending to this sector more attractive for our banks and other institutions. And some of these initiatives, legislative initiatives, would include as explained, the Agri-Agra amendment, as well as the warehouse receipts bill. So if we can use our voices to support this necessary reforms to make our agri-financing infrastructure, financial infrastructure, more responsive to the evolving needs of the sector, then that would really be a big help. So we can use our voices, our collective voices, to push for this sustainable and high impact reforms beyond giving beyond mandatory credit allocation and straightforward but not necessarily high impact initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Suficiencia. Let's have Sir Ginny next. Sir?
Okay, as emphasized, value chain is generation of information. So please help us generate information as well. Like maybe there are some good agricultural projects or enterprises out there that you may want to include in our shopping list and for us to be able to finance. So there might be some other banks who would have some interest also in that value chain financing approach, kindly approach BSP. Okay, we are operating mostly in Mindanao, certain parts of Luzon, and certain parts of Visayas. So whatever that is, I think you can always get in touch with the value chain project. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ginny. And for our last speaker, Miss Joyce Bengo, your final message, ma'am.
Okay, thank you again, Circa, for inviting the AMAS to present our program. Actually, my key takeaway also for this morning's webinar is that the value chain analysis really is the way to go. Our interventions, as I learned from the presentations a while ago of my co-panelists, that really our intervention should be linked to value chain. And there's really a necessary to capacitate our farmers and future folks to be able to help them to be sustainable in supplying and producing food for every one of us. And I would like to encourage everyone, take this opportunity to encourage everyone to support the Kadiwa program of the Department of Agriculture. If you have heard of it, if you have heard that there are Kadiwa selling events near you, please support, because you are not only supporting local enterprises, you are supporting the farmers and fisher folks who are diligently producing food for the people. Thank you very much in behalf of DA.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bengo. On behalf of SEARCA, led by our director, Dr. Glenn Gregorio, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Director Suficiencia, Mr. Jamon, and Ms. Bengo for taking the time to join us today. It has been a pleasure to have you with us this morning. That ends our webinar, but before we close, please let us know what you think about this webinar by following the link to a quick feedback form shown on your screen. The same link will direct you to the request form for the e-certificate. Your feedback will help us improve our online learning events. Please note that we will only accommodate requests for e-certificates within 24 hours after the end of this webinar. Kindly wait for your e-certificate to be issued at least within a month, as we receive a lot of requests for e-certificates. Thank you for your understanding and patience. Please join us again next week for our next online conversation. That's March 19, 2021 from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. In celebration of Women's Month, we have invited women leaders who will talk about their experiences in agripreneurship. Please don't miss it. Let us help one another get through this COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that as we go along, we will be able to create a community of better, bigger, and smarter farmers and farming communities. Once again, this is Jean Labios for SEARCA. Have a good day, stay healthy, stay safe, and goodbye, everyone.